My father lived in an area which was rachok from Asiyim, and I was fasting, and my mother wasn't there, so my new wife and I were doing all the work, and we did not start the Seder very early. And we had received this beautiful Kiddush cup. I didn't measure it, but it looked like I really had a shear. And I used straight wine, none of this water stuff, none of this mavushal stuff, no jokes. And I made Kiddush, and I drank the first cup, and we did a little bit of talking, and we'd come to the second cup, and I said, and I drank the second cup. Tsvi, you did haseba on the wrong side. Well, the second cup, kuliyama lo pligan. It's very hard to find anything that nobody disagrees with. If the second cup you did wrong, you have to drink it over again. Well, of course, I was drinking the whole cup also. I was a very frum guy in those days, not like now. And so I drank the whole cup. La'achar ma'aser, we measured it, and it was like, 5 ounces, 7 ounces. It was a big cup. And I didn't make it past the soup. But anyway, back to the ranch. Okay. 11 years ago, Baruch Shem, my son, we didn't talk about everything yet. How to buy fish. All right? Now, you are in the Holy Land, and you can go to holy Jews to buy fish. Lots of fish stores have a hechsher. Now, we have new problems of worms in the fish, and who knows what in the fish. These worms were just imported lately. We didn't know about them in the old days. Maybe they just started having worms. I don't know. But anyway, we'll ignore for the moment the issue of worms, or we'll assume we're talking about species that don't have worms. You go to the fish store. Which fish store? The Goyish fish store. El Pedro in Washington Heights, Tesco in Gateshead. You're going to the Goyish fish store. You look carefully and you see the fish. It is a fish shalem, a dag shalem. It has its bones, it has its scales, it has its fins. You know that this is a kosher fish. You ask the attendant to wash his hands. You make sure that the knife is clean. Soap is pretty good. And then, it'd be even nicer if he had a special knife. Then you watch him as he cuts the fish, as he packages the fish. Keep not letting your eye waver a moment, because he's got a whole area full of fish there, cut, uncut, who knows what, right? Or you ask him to leave a little bit of the skin still on the fish. He wraps it up, he gives it to you, you take it home, and then you wash it very well under the running water. This was acceptable to the Rabbanim Chashuvim of the Dor HaChadesh of Kahal Hadas Ashur and Breuers in New York. This was acceptable to Rav Rakaver, the Rav of Gateshead Zeichel Livracha. So this is acceptable. But now you have to worry about the worms, and you must make sure that it was a dag hashalem. You may not buy fillets without skin on them that were not properly under supervision the entire time and put with proper chosamos. And you may not eat shellfish and other things which are aser, of course, and not even if they are in an OU can with a mashgiach tmidi. Let's just say you are traveling, okay? So we will be traveling next week. Mirz Hashem b'siyata d'shmai. Maybe Hashem will rain down the money here and I won't have to go. And I don't like to eat airplane food for a number of reasons. I'm very particular about the meat I eat. And Chodesh Chutz La'aretz is a problem. So my wife will be making lox. And she will be packaging it in 100-gram packages. And she'll put her tapes around it and she'll sign it, or I'll sign it, and that's well and good. But let's just say that you did the airplane thing, right? So they're supposed to bring it to you sealed, so that you are the one who's breaking the seal and you're keeping your eye out. Now, and you're in the middle of your meal and you have to go to the bathroom, you have to do something, and I'm not sure exactly what that something is. I mean, we always travel with masking tape and markers. I'm serious. As long as the TSA doesn't start up with me, I don't start up with them. But you have to do something so that you will know that your meal has not been tampered with. Okay, I will tell you a story. The story is told as a true story, but I do not vouch for the story. Right? Now, I try very hard to be careful about things like this. If I saw a story, I'll tell you the story. If I spoke to Rav Moshe Feinstein Zeich Levracha, or I spoke to Rav Moshe Bick, or I spoke to Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik Zichronim Levracha, then I'll tell you I spoke to them. But if somebody else told me Bishmo, then I will say somebody told me his name and I don't vouch for it. Right? So, anyway, the story is that the guy had his kosher meal, and it included a bread, and we won't get into the issue of Mazona's bread, but a little hint would be wash and make hamotzi. He got up to wash. Washing in the bathroom, there's a separate issue. He got up to wash and he came back, and he's about to make hamotzi, and he says, wait a minute, what about basar shemisalam in a ayin? Meat that was not under supervision. Yosef v'nichnas, and he didn't eat it. And the guy sitting next to him said, how come you didn't eat it? He said, well, we have this law that if it was left without supervision, we can't eat it. And the guy said, you know, I always wanted to taste kosher meat to see if it was any different, and I switched my piece with your piece. Whether the story really happened, I don't know, but this is the story they tell, and this is the thing you must be choshish for. You don't know what's going to happen. And the yotze v'nichnas, it depends whether it's more yotze or more nichnas. Yes?
If you have another kosher Jew, can't you have...
Yes, you absolutely can. Always travel with a buddy. It's a very good idea. If you're married, bring your wife. If you're not married, bring a friend. Very good idea. Excellent. Yes, that works. Okay, so we talked about pizza delivery, we talked about meat delivery, we talked about airplanes. Flour from Russia. How many people knew that the Eda Charetis flour is grown in Russia?
You could also not open the seal on the meat part
until you correct. Okay, so the flour.
Is that only one chaysim left?
Well, supposedly they no. When you there's an outer, there's an inner, and there's a third one usually. Okay, the flour that the Baruch Hashem Chazde Habore, the government did a nice thing. I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but they put the Eda Charetis in charge of the flour which is imported into Israel. We're talking specifically about wheat flour. I know nothing about anything else, right? I mean, I may, but I'm not talking about it now. The wheat flour which comes into Israel is supposed to be under hashgacha of the Eda Charetis as far as Chodesh and Yoshin is concerned. So we used to think in our innocence that the flour was coming from America, and whatever klolim there were in America were applicable here. But in fact, the flour comes from Russia. Okay, now, and this is again not our topic, but we'll throw it in anyway. I got a free throw in here. You're baking, or your wife is baking challah at home, and after you have a certain amount of kemach, you have to be mafresh challah. We call our Shabbos bread challah al shem that you have to mafresh challah. You have to separate the part which is supposed to go to the Kohen. How much flour does it have to be in the dough in order to mafresh challah? This one says 2 kilos, this one says 20 kilos. It's no number of kilos whatsoever. It is a volume of 43.2 eggs. Has nothing to do with weight. If I take a kilo of flour, which I bought in Beersheba, which has been sitting on the shelf in Beersheba for a month, and I take it to Bnei Brak and I leave it there for a month, it will weigh more than a kilo because it absorbed the moisture, right? So some people said, hey, the new flour has more moisture than the old flour, so maybe these Ruskies are switching the flour, the new for the old, and slipping Chodesh on us. Right? So Rabbi Malenowitz is saying, how far are you going to go? And I'm going to say, you don't have to go that far because Chazal never said that you need chosamos for flour. It's a chashash rachok. You don't have to worry about it. Okay? We gave you a cooler tonight. Okay. Now, some war stories. My daughter, Baruch Hashem, married...
What does that mean? It means a somach on the goyim?
No. They have hashgacha there. When they harvest it, they have hashgacha. Then they load it on the boats. They loaded on the boats, and these guys thought they took the boat to another port and switched the flour. And I said, come on, give me a break, right? Okay, 11 years ago, my daughter, she should live me well, got married. A fine yeshiva man, he's learning in Koil ad Hayom. Baruch Hashem, I give them the chickens, I give them money. I followed the advice of one of my good friends. He said, give money and shut up. So I don't give them advice, I give them money. Okay. So she got married. I was in America when they made the arrangements for the wedding. Now, there's a cherem in Yerushalayim not to have more musicians than a drummer. And if you heard these drummers, you could understand that my daughter wanted to have a full band. And even though it's only one drummer, they make it plenty loud also. So there's a place called Moshav Ora. And Moshav Ora is technically outside of the area of the cherem. And they have a catering there in Moshav Ora. So she went out with the chassan and with the chassan's uncle, who was an excellent, excellent negotiator. They got a tremendous price, the hall and the catering together for $4,000, which was a great price. At a great time, a June wedding. And they called me up for my approval. And what question did I ask? What's the hechsher? I've been talking for nothing if you didn't figure that out. What's the hechsher? And she said, Badatz. I said, fine, sign on the dotted line. Now, what does Badatz mean? It means Beis Din Tzedek. Yechiel will tell you there's the Beis Din Tzedek of bells, there's the Beis Din Tzedek of Yoredeya, there's the Beis Din Tzedek of Choshen Mishpat, and there's even the, so the words Badatz, or the initials Badatz, mean 0, but we Americans always thought Badatz meant Eideh Charedis. So here I come back from America, and we're getting closer to the chasna, and I want to kosher all the chickens for the chasna, right? Because I don't like to feed somebody something that I don't eat myself, and make sure we have the real glatt. So I went out to the place at Ora, and I've heard that the ownership has changed since then, and my daughter was particularly concerned that I shouldn't name names. So we'll say that very possibly the place has changed ownership, and maybe the whole thing is different now. So we're talking 11 years ago, historical event, and I start reading over things in the guy's possession very carefully, and it says it says Badatz Mahadrin Yerushalayim. Well, the Eideh Charedis does not write Badatz Mahadrin Yerushalayim. So I asked, are you Eideh Charedis? He said, no, Rabbanut Mahadrin. Okay. So I said, we would like to have Badatz. And he said, well, for $1 a head, I'll give you Badatz chickens, and for $3 a head, I'll give you only Badatz ingredients. Eideh Charedis, right. For $1 a head, I'll give you Eideh Charedis chickens, and for $3 a head, only Eideh Charedis ingredients. So I call up my friend who's much frommer than I am. He thinks I'm a shegitz. And I said, what do we do? He said, you're paying for the cabs, right? And I said, of course. So he came out, and we talked to the mashgiach, employee of the Rabbanut Yerushalayim Mahadrin Hashgacha system. And we asked what's doing. And he said the Arabs sleep in the kitchen. Now we talked about the babysitter, we talked about the maid, we didn't talk about the Arabs sleeping in the kitchen. But if it's 100% glatt kosher equipment and 100% glatt kosher ingredients, and the Arab cooks himself an egg on the frying pan, then the frying pan is treif. You may not use it. And if he's left there all night, you cannot be certain that he did not use it, but you probably can bet that he did. And the mashgiach told us other issues, and he said that he made a chasna there for his daughter. And knowing everything that he did, and being a professional mashgiach, and being very familiar with the place, he said he would never do it again there, even if they did it entirely for free for him. So what we said is, my friend and I went into the owner, and we said, we want 3 mashgichim, and we want all the doors to the kitchen locked except one. And he said, you can have 1 mashgiach, and all the doors will stay open. And even though I had to pay him for all of the food, we brought in outside catering and paid for the food a second time. That's what kashrus is about. It doesn't matter how poor I am, I can't feed my guests stuff that is not allowed. And we didn't.